Even a country like the US has been given a lesson that you may have a country like Iran which does not have nuclear weapons, which is much weaker, but even Iran can teach you a lesson.
US is not the major player, but US is involved everywhere.
That the US is so well off that it thinks it can get away with anything.
Where does India stand today?
Mr. Modi was responsible for enhancing relations with UAE, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. But despite all this, when all this has happened, India has been a side player.
Do you think India plays safe?
Now this year we are president of BRICS. Now this was an opportunity where we could have, as the president of BRICS, Iran is a member of BRICS. We could have taken a certain stand with regard to this war. But we undermined our own stand by our very pro-Israeli, pro-American position.
Hi sir, before we get into everything happening around the world, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do and how you got into this space.
I specialized in the United States from the School of International Studies in Jawaharlal Nehru University. And then for a brief while, I was in an academic institution. Then I joined journalism. I was with the Hindu newspaper for almost 10 years. Then I was with the Times of India. Then I went abroad for an assignment and came back. I was with India Today, again Times of India, Hindustan Times, Mail Today. That is part of the India Today thing. And now I'm with the Observer Research Foundation as a distinguished fellow. And so I have basically all my life covered foreign affairs and security affairs. And as a result of that, I have an abiding interest in these areas. I have written several books. Two of the principal ones are one on the Kashmir situation, which was published in 1999 and republished in 2019, and another book on the India-China border issue, which was published in 2022.
Tell us something about the organization where you are working right now.
Well, I'm with the Observer Research Foundation, which has been around since the 1990s. Basically, it was set up to promote liberalization when India opened up. So the idea was that when India was opening up, it would require policy support from a think tank. And so this think tank was set up. It received funding from the Ambani Group, Reliance Group, and now it does a lot of work with the government of India. We organize the annual Raisina Dialogue, and we have branches all over the world.
So, every day there is some new headline. Right now, it feels like something is constantly happening somewhere in the world. Conflicts, tensions, power shift. So, do you think we are entering a more unstable phase globally?
I would say so, because the reason is that what has happened is that part of what has been happening has been a steady erosion of the world order that emerged in the wake of World War II. So that world order was centered around the United Nations and its agencies, the World Bank, IMF, International Monetary Fund. So all these were set up to basically stabilize the world politically as well as economically. And the key country behind this was the United States of America.
United States.
And what has been happening in recent years is that the United States has been itself undermining this world order. So, and as a result of which, we really don't know what is to come. Meaning, what is the new world of meaning?
Yeah.
The United States has undermined, for example, the World Trade Organization. So trading system, the whole world benefited from the open trade that came with the creation of the World Trade Organization. See, but now what we are seeing is that the United States itself doesn't accept the WTO. It doesn't bother about the United Nations. Its recent war on Iran is a case in point. The United Nations, has very strict rules on the use of force. You know, and the U.S. itself, in a sense, was the creator of the UN. But the US has been violating those rules, has violated those rules because they are not convenient for them at this moment. So this has created a problem. So the trading system is at a halt. The political system has been affected by the US. So we are looking, as I said,
Right.
for a possible the old order is collapsing. Just what will the new order be like is not very clear.
So, with Trump in power today, how do you read the US strategy globally? I mean, what is US really trying to do right now?
I'm not sure that they have a strategy. I think Trump knows what he doesn't want. You know, I, he said that the his allies have been freeloading on the U.S. See, he looks down on the United Nations. He is distrustful of the world trade system. See, so he knows what he doesn't like. What he wants is more difficult to pin down.
But doesn't it look like that US is trying to maintain the dominance the way they have been doing it? It is looking like more dictatorship.
Well, see, the thing is, in the wake of World War II, when the whole system came up, there was no doubt that the US was the dominant country. It had been untouched in World War II. Its prosperity grew in the 1950s, 1960s. Others were just trying to repair the war damage. So the thing is that the U.S. hegemony has been there, meaning the U.S. economy, in terms of the proportion of the world GDP, has been around 30-35 for quite some time, 35% for quite some time. It was there in the 1990s, it's there today. So the US economic dominance has not declined. But what has happened is that the US has gotten involved in a lot of wars whose outcome was negative for the US. Meaning there have been question marks about the US the US handling of political situations around the world. So whether it was Iraq in 2003, Afghanistan, whether it is now Iran, the US handling has been fairly disastrous. And in the meantime, as I said, the US has not in that sense declined. In the meantime, other countries have grown. And one of the countries that has grown is China, which has had a remarkable growth in the last years. China has shown extraordinary growth, and that growth has been all around. It is not just economic growth, but growth in knowledge, science, technical issues. So China has also grown. So the US feels that its hegemony is being questioned. You see, but that is that US cannot run the world in the way it ran it, in the old days.
Right. If we look at everything together right now, be it first Ukraine, then now Middle East, and US and China. So are these separate events, or is it a part of a bigger shift?
No, I think these are separate events because I don't think it's possible to link them in any way because there is a separate process happening, let us say, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the creation of countries like Ukraine, the difficulties that NATO has had with regard to Russia. So that is a completely different track. You see, whereas what is happening in the Middle East is a different track. You see, the US often figures. Now, for example, in the case of Ukraine, the US is not a major player, though US is a major supporter of Ukraine.
Supporter
Yes.
of Ukraine.
But it's not a major player. Politically, it is the Europeans who are affected. You see, and even in the Middle East, the US is not a major player. The US is not dependent on oil of the Middle East. The US is
It looks like US is not the major player, but US is involved everywhere.
well. The point is, they are involved. The choice is theirs. But in the case of the Middle East, you see, many people say that they are basically following the agenda of Israel. That it is Israel which wants to dominate the Middle East, and they are able to successfully manipulate the U.S. system to, make war. For example, the current war, or the last year also, the war. Even U.S. leaders, meaning even the February 28th event, the U.S. Secretary of State says that Iran was going to attack Israel, so therefore we attacked. When he was asked why did the US get into this, you see. So what I'm trying to say is that Israel has played a big role in the US involvement in the Middle East. The US itself doesn't really require, as I said, Middle East oil anymore. There are no vital interests of the US.
Okay.
And the Trump administration, which had come in, if you look at their national security strategy of last year, it basically says that the US wants to be the dominant player in its own hemisphere, in the Western Hemisphere.
Okay. Western Hemisphere, yeah.
So it wants to be the dominant player there. But somehow it is not being able to let go. It is still pulled in by different events.
In fact, today also we have seen that the US and Iran failed to reach a deal. So how should we understand this with the tension around the Strait of Hormuz? How serious can this get?
Well, it is serious. What we have is a ceasefire. The developments of the last 2 weeks have been very serious. There has been a full-scale war going on out there. But the US seemed to be trying to achieve through negotiations what it had failed to win by war. You see?
Yeah.
So when Mr. Vance has put forward various demands, the problem is who won the war, and that's a big question mark there because in some ways Iran has won the war, and in some ways the US has won the war. So US has damaged Iran very seriously, but the US has not achieved any of its political objectives. So, the whole point of war, is to achieve certain political objectives. You don't fight for the sake of fighting. You fight for certain ends.
Yeah. So, do you think the power today is less about military strength and more about economies and trade, technology?
Of course, meaning, power has always been distributed that way. Military plays a certain role, and as everyone knows that the nature of military power is such, it's basically a destructive power. You see? It's a destructive power, but as I said,
Yeah.
you have to be clear in your mind as when you use military power, what are the ends you wish to achieve? You see, what are the ends you wish to achieve? The military power has to be married to political objectives. You see, and it must be guided by the political class.
Previously, it used to be military. Whenever any war happens, it used to be military, used to be always there. But now there are different ways to break the country.
Well, the point is, uh, when you look at something like war, as we know from World War II, war becomes total. In the sense, you bombard cities, you bombard this thing, you destroy everything that the enemy has. That is a fact, and that's why I said that the world community has tried after World War II. That was the world order, as I spoke to you. One of the aspects of the world order was an attempt to restrain the instrument of war. So you had 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949 and 2 additional protocols. So these Geneva Conventions, they laid out very clearly you can't attack civilians, you can't attack civilian infrastructure, you can't, whatever you, when you respond in a war, your response must be proportionate. Meaning if one of your people have been killed, you can't kill 100 people on the other side. You see, but now countries like Israel have been violating this completely. Meaning in Gaza, they have killed over
Civilians also,
almost 80,000 civilians, whereas in that terror incident of October 7th, they lost about 2,000 people. And often what they are doing is, if there is one Hamas operative living in a building, they will bring the whole building down. Which will kill everyone there. So what I'm saying is that's a war crime by So the US also had the War Crimes Act of 1996. By its own act, it has been violating. And actually, the US, the president is supposed to seek the authorization of the US Congress. And he has not got that.
Okay.
And as I said earlier to you, that the UN rules are very strict. The UN says that even wars of self-defense, even if you have been attacked, you must go to the UN. And the UN can then authorize your response.
But that's not happening.
That is not happening. So I'm just saying that the UN has, but because the custodian of that is the UN Security Council. But the UN US is a member. You can veto anything that comes against you. So the system has not been working structurally.
So, what do you think if these ongoing conflicts continue at this pace? How do you think it reshapes the world over the next few years?
Well, from what you can see here, is that the world system has increasingly become self-centered. Every country says, what's in it for me? The old agreements, WTO, etc., there was a question of exchange, that I concede most favored nation treaty to you, status to you. You also do the same to me. You see?
Same to me. Right?
So, but now it is that what can I gain out of this? What do I gain out of this? And the thing is that you can take increasingly, if countries like the US are taking recourse to war without UN authorization, without congressional authorization, then the other countries also say that, look, why do we need to bother? If we have some aim, we should go to war. And one of the big question marks there is the issue of whether China might invade Taiwan, to reclaim Taiwan. You see, because that has been China has said, has warned that it will reclaim Taiwan by force or otherwise.
Yeah. Who actually pays the price for of these global
Well,
conflicts?
you're seeing the bulk of the people who are paying the price are the civilians, are the
Civilians, right? Yeah.
non-combatants. You see, and the
Non-combatants,
thing
correct.
is
Yeah.
that the leaders who bring on this war, they get away with it because we are unable to
Exactly.
hold them to account.
Exactly. Correct. I feel the colonization has not ended. It has just changed the form through trade, tech, and influence. Do you agree with this?
Not really, because all said and done, in 1950 when decolonization began, we were much worse off.
Yeah.
Meaning all of us, let us say, all of us colonies, our education system was non-existent. Our ability to shape our own policy was non-existent. You see, so over time, things have changed enormously, and I think even here now, even a country like the US has been given a lesson that you may have a country like Iran, which does not have nuclear weapons, which is much weaker, but
Yeah.
even Iran can teach you a lesson.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what I'm saying
Exactly.
is that
That.
it is what the Iranians have shown is that it is possible to stand up, if you have the gumption, and the United States,
Yeah.
at well, it's not just the United States. The Afghans have done it before that. The Iraqis have done it. The Vietnamese famously did it. So it is possible to stand up to a world power, and
Yeah. I think it.
but the
Yeah.
question is that and mind you, as far as the American public is concerned, they understand this. But you have a president who came to power saying that he will not go to war. He was against any external commitments. Trump came to power on that pledge, and now he has gone back on that pledge. See, of course, he
Yeah.
claims he has done it for defend America.
American.
But the fact of the matter is,
Yeah.
how is he defending America? Because Iran actually posed no threat to the US. Physically, Iran does not have any weapons that can reach the US. You see, so there was no real threat. As I said to you earlier, that it was Israel. Now the question is,
Israel.
if the US is fighting war on behalf of other countries, then it's a big issue.
It's a big issue. 100%. It's a big issue. How is uh, U.S. economy right now? Like whatever is going on, how is it? How is U.S.
Well, the US is doing quite well, meaning the US is doing quite well, though because of the war, there has been a spike in inflation. And if the war continues, that inflationary pressure will continue, which affects the common man in the sense, in terms of prices, but of fuel prices,
interest loans?
fuel
Yeah.
prices, food prices. The American farmers are complaining that fertilizer prices have become too expensive. So the US economy is doing well. The US has the biggest economy in the world. But the point is, that has probably been the problem, that the US is so well off that it thinks it can get away with anything.
What do you think? Who is controlling the world today?
See, no one is controlling the world. All of us are. And as I said,
Okay.
the increasingly, the Americans would like to think they are controlling the world. They had a system, meaning if you look at the post-war system, the Americans' alliance system, rang from all of NATO, Western Europe, as well as Japan, South Korea, Australia. So they had an extensive global system. But the strange thing that has happened is that one of the elements of this of the Trump presidency has been to attack this system. So the US now says America first, and everyone else they don't care. You see? So yes, America remains a dominant country. America remains a major country, but they have, strangely enough, undercut their own dominance,
Yeah.
by fighting with their allies, and
Allies.
by actually pushing their allies to spend more on defense. They are actually promoting the independence of their allies. You see, and it is true that allies were very dependent on the US earlier, but now they are less so.
Things have changed in last 4 to 5 years.
Yes.
Right. In middle of all this, US, China, Middle East, where does we stand today? Where does India stand today?
Well, India has been doing reasonably well from the economic point of view. We also, except last year for that 88-hour war, we have not gotten involved in wars and things like that abroad. You see? So basically, we are an area of stability. So when other countries look at us, they think, well, this is a good place to invest. This is a good place to do business with. This country is doing well. But sometimes, we tend to exaggerate our influence. So we tend to exaggerate our capacity. We do not have the kind of leverage in the global system that we think that we have. You see, and the recent war is itself an indication of that. You have seen that India, which Mr. Modi has was responsible for developing relations with, enhancing relations with UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. But despite all this, when all this has happened, India has been a side player in this war. We have not been, and though we are directly affected, there are 10 million Indian citizens in the Gulf. They send back $35 billion worth of remittances every year. We get 50% of our oil, LPG, oil from that area. Yet and this is our neighborhood actually. When you look at the map, it's our neighborhood. But yet we have not played any kind of a significant role. You see, in any way. So what I'm trying to say is that
we have maintained our position well in front of media.
Well, the point is that a lot of it is propaganda. In the sense that it is you pat yourself on the back, and our media tends to be very happy with that. That you pat yourself on the back and say, I'm great. But the point is, you don't have leverage. See, the whole point of power is what is my capacity to shape the policy of other countries. So if you look at the United States can shape the policy of UK, it can shape the policy of Germany, it can shape the policy of Japan. So that's a huge amount of power. But can India even shape the policy of Nepal, or Bangladesh, So we are still, and don't forget that the bulk of our population is extremely poor. 800 million people are getting free rations every year. They're getting food. So unless and until that changes, and there's a tendency in India to give these minor handouts, 2,000 rupees per woman or whatever it is. But that 2,000 rupees, does it make any difference? It doesn't do anything. But when you count the 2,000 rupees, what I'm saying is that when you count it, the total is a lot. And that sum could actually be usefully used to invest in some productive manner. For example, if it is
an agenda.
Yes. So it is. too much of our politics is election driven.
And I feel India plays safe. Do you think India plays safe, or India is playing smart?
I think India is playing realistic.
Yes.
Meaning, India is playing realistic. India is being realistic about its capabilities. So you can call it playing safe, but it's really realism. And then, frankly, no one is looking at India as a possible intervener in anything.
Okay.
Though we are now this year we are president of BRICS. Now this was an opportunity where we could have, as the president of BRICS, and Iran is a member of BRICS, we could have taken a certain stand with regard to this war. But we undermined our own stand by our very pro-Israeli, pro-American position. I mean, the Prime Minister going to Israel 2 days before the war, getting a high award there. Then the fact that we did not condole the death of Ayatollah Khamenei, which is completely needless. There was no reason why, from the protocol point of view, that we should not have condoled that. You see?
Correct.
So that has left that. So India was seen as a country which has taken sides, whereas our strength lay in the fact that we were seen as a neutral actor by all the parties. See, before that, we had good relations with Iran, we had good relations with Saudi Arabia, we had good relations with Israel, with everyone. But now in this war, it is the perception is that we have leaned too much on the American side.
Maybe there is a reason because of tariff and everything, whatever is going on from last 1 year.
I don't think it was because of the tariff. See, tariff affects everyone.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that the powers that be thought that, like Venezuela, the US will quickly make short work of Iran. You see? And so India will come out with the winning side.
Right.
But that has not happened. See? Iran surprised everyone, including the US.
Including US. Correct.
You see? So our calculation went wrong. We miscalculated the result. And I think immediately, of course, Iranians still say they are our friends and all that. But I think this will have a longer term impact.
Impact, yeah. Okay. And how do you see India and China relationship evolving from here?
In 1990, the size of the Chinese economy and the size of the Indian economy was roughly equal.
Okay.
And if you look at railways, the Indian railways were better than Chinese railways in 1990. But if you look at today, the Chinese economy is what, 5 times larger.
More than 5 times, maybe, yeah.
Larger.
Right.
The Chinese have something like 40,000 high-speed rail, 40,000 kilometers of high-speed railways. Now, we are putting all this Vande Bharat and all that. They are not really high-speed. The trains only look have changed their shape. Their appearance looks very modern, but the speeds are the same. So what I'm saying is that the Chinese have moved ahead very systematically, and they are now emerged as they have some of the leading universities of the world are in China, some of the leading scientific institutions. They have become major innovators.
What did they do different? Because in 1990, you were saying that we were ahead of China, right?
Yes.
What did
No,
they
we
do
were
different?
roughly equal, I would say.
Equal. Yeah.
What they did was they very systematically mapped out their future, and they were able to move in a very systematic fashion. They identified areas in which they needed to move ahead, and then one of the areas was manufacturing.
Okay.
So then they when they got technology, I'll give you the example of railways, which I told you that today they are the leading country in high-speed rail. You know, so and they were behind us in 1990. So what they did was in 1990s they were planning to modernize their railways. So they issued a tender for 400 train sets, entire trains. Okay, and all the leading companies of the world, Siemens, the Kawasaki, uh, and all the leading companies of the world, they applied for that tender. So what they did was they divided that tender between 4 or 5 companies, European, all world companies,
World country. Okay.
and one of the conditions was transfer of technology.
Oh.
And so, and now, railway technology is not rocket science. It's fairly simple technology. So, so most people agreed. Now, when they transferred the technology, they also set up special institutions to absorb that technology,
To understand the technology.
understand and absorb, and what they call re-innovation. They call re-innovation, which means that they would move ahead from that. And so, so I was telling you, 1990s, late 1990s, this happened. By 2008, they had already set up their first high-speed train of their own. You see, and they had set up these institutions which provided the technological backup. You see, as I told you, these research institutions. See, and so only. And in the case of China, they bought the technology, they coerced countries to sharing technology, they stole the technology, they did various things, but they got the technology. So they managed to get that technology, and the other thing, of course, was their entry into the WTO. They entered the WTO in 2000. The US helped them, and the US helped them for political reasons, because the US and China were close to each other at that time. You see, once they were in the WTO, they used the WTO system to promote their manufacturers. You see, so what I'm saying is that the leadership that was provided, for example, very early they identified electrical vehicles. They realized that China had been left behind in the petrol engine race. The normal combustion engine was a Western dominance. So they said, we will dominate the next revolution, which is what? Electrical vehicles.
Electric vehicles, yeah.
So they focused on batteries, special batteries, special electrical vehicles. So today they are the leaders in electrical vehicles.
Yeah, they are the leaders.
And battery technology.
Yeah. Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, but these are long. They had thought of this in the 1990s, and the plan has unfolded to the 2010s, 2020s.
Yeah.
You see, look at Xiaomi. Xiaomi company is well known for telephones. But today Xiaomi has become a leading EV manufacturer. Also.
Yeah. Right.
See? So basically it has been planning, systematic investment, competition. What they do is that the different states compete with each other. You see? And of course, state policy, what is called industrial policy. See, earlier the Americans used to look down on industrial policy. Now the Americans are themselves encouraging industrial policy.
One more reason is that the Chinese government, state government, they support their businesses over there. If the business is making loss, then the government will intervene and they will support. Is it true? Because I have heard about this.
It's that, as I said, that a lot of the responsibility for the development rests with the state governments.
State government.
In China. You see? So the state government provides subsidies. And they have, so what happens is that there is such extreme competition. You have 30 companies which are doing robotics in China there. They're competing with each other.
Yeah.
You see? So 30 companies doing robotics. 20 companies in space launch. 20 companies. You see? So what I'm saying is that they have a system where they encourage this competition, between companies, and those state governments then they are supporting, and also they know when at what point they don't support, they pull out,
Okay.
so they don't, and of course they have built up the kind of money that has been invested in China is huge.
Yeah.
And they are a huge market. Meaning, if you look at all the European car manufacturers, many of them depend on the Chinese market.
On the Chinese, yeah.
Like Japanese depend on the Chinese marketers.
So, few years back, there was a strong narrative around China plus one, that countries were actively trying to move away from China. But if we look at the broader picture today, even with all the geopolitical issues, many countries still seem heavily dependent on China.
Earlier, people thought that once China will abandon the low quality manufacture. Now China is into high quality manufacture.
High quality manufacture, yeah.
Okay. So earlier China used to manufacture this iPhone, and it used to get a fraction, $12 for assembling it. You see, but over the years, the amount of they get from manufacturing different components of this has increased. You see, so the people thought that the Chinese would shed the low end manufacturers. They did not. They didn't shed. They sent to Vietnam, to Malaysia, and to other countries. Many people thought India would take advantage of it.
Yeah. Right.
So we started this PLI scheme. This what's it? Product linked investment scheme. PLI. The PLI scheme hasn't worked. You see, it hasn't worked. You see, the thing is that the Chinese goods are still cheaper than what you can produce.
Of course.
So what I'm saying is that the competition is so intense. I was telling you about, if there are 30 robotics companies,
they're competing with each other.
So they're competing with each other. So the prices keep coming down. You see? So and some of it, of course, hurts China, hurts those companies. But the thing is that it becomes very difficult for a company in a third country to compete with them.
Yeah.
So that is the reason why we have not been able to emerge. And of course, the advantage that has been there has gone to Vietnam and Malaysia and these countries.
Yeah.
And the other blunder that we made was that we refused to join RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive, RCEP,
Okay.
the Regional Economic Cooperation Agreement. It's a free trade agreement between a number of countries, which includes China, Australia, Japan, all of Southeast Asia, because we said that the Chinese were the dominant players there. But the fact of the matter is that if you are in RCEP, your trade between you and the other RCEP member is much easier.
Correct.
You see? So, but we initially were very keen for RCEP, but then last minute we dropped out. So the result is, all those countries have one kind of an economic bloc, but we are out of it. We are out of any
reason behind it.
Because we felt that the Chinese, it would benefit China. But yes, it would benefit China, but it would also benefit us.
Okay.
You see, but now you look at the Indian policy, you're seeing that Indian policy acknowledges. They say that, yes, we need to be either part of the Chinese supply chain or we need Chinese investment. Now the government accepts that. But we have wasted a couple of years, in taking... See, this is where I said that India has sometimes an exaggerated opinion of its own power. So we don't have that kind of market power that is needed. And so the result is that because if you are trying to set up any kind of industry to compete with China, the irony is that you will have to buy machines and machine tools from China to set up that industry.
Yeah.
You see? And you need Chinese specialists to help you set it up.
Right. So how long could it take for a country like India to ever come close to China to that level?
It's that difficult to forecast but Modi ji says 2047, but Viksit Bharat. But the point is, I'm not so sure because after all, Modi ji has had 11, 12 years in power.
10 years, yeah.
But we don't see anything substantial. He said that we would have smart cities, we would have this, we would have that, but none of it is visible.
But things are changing.
No. Things change in any case. If you do nothing, things change also. What I'm saying is that there is a natural condition of life in which things change. But you look at the cities around you, have things changed significantly? And I would say no. Meaning, let's say your urban life, have things changed significantly in 12 years? 12 years is a long time. In my case, in New Delhi, no. I would say that traffic has become more heavier, but I don't think it has become better.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is things will change. That is the, it's like, I remember Mr. Jagjivan Ram once told me, when Rajiv Gandhi used to say, 21st century, Rajiv Gandhi, one of his slogans used to be that, in 21st century, India will be great and all that. Yeah. So, Mr. Jagjivan Ram once told me, he said, why is he talking of 21st century? 21st century will come on its own. Rajiv Gandhi doesn't have to bring 21st century. 21st century to apne aap aa jayega.
Apne aap aa jayega. That actually makes you think different about everything that's happening around us.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about any particular topic?
Not really, but as I said, one of the important things we have to see, when you talk of war and all this kind of stuff, the question is often asked, what is our national aim?
Yeah.
People, the national aim. So someone will say, this.
What is our national aim?
National aim, national goal. So I think our national aim is a very humble one, or should be the very humble one, which is to eliminate poverty amongst the people of India.
Yeah.
Instead of talking big about world power and this and that, the point is, let us eliminate poverty for the mass of Indians. You do that.
We do it.
Well, you need the policies. You have the money. You can invest in the right places. Can create agro industry. You can create industry. Promote manufacturing. India has not been able to. India's share of manufacturing in the GDP remains the same as it was in 2014, 2015. Or manufacturing, we have to, whether we like it or not, we have to become a manufacturing country. But we have not been able to.
Then only it is possible. Do you think
because
manufacturing is the key part?
Manufacturing is very important for the simple reason that even today, though agriculture is a smaller perception of your GDP, the bulk of your workforce lives in the villages.
Villages, right.
Why are they living in the village? Not because they like it, but it's cheaper for them. You see, the point is when the urban workforce has a problem, they rush back to the village because that is their social security.
Correct.
You see, so what I'm saying is they're not living there. Yeah. They're underemployed. Right. So it's easier to live underemployed or unemployed in your village home than to be living in a city. So what I'm trying to say is that you need manufacturing jobs. See, information technology and all that, they don't create too many jobs. You see, it is manufacturing which creates jobs.
Manufacturing which creates jobs, right?
So it's very important for India to have a manufacturing revolution. So from 15%, we should go up to 30% of our economy should be on through manufacture. Then otherwise you won't be able to employ those people. You should have
That's how
few.
China.
That is how China. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I'm saying is that is the reason. If you have that manufacturing revolution, many things happen with it. You see, educational issues, scientific issues, because all that is required for that manufacturing revolution.
Correct.
So that is so. This thing is the humble thing that your national aim should be focusing on the people of this country and transforming the life of the average man.
Great, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Had a great conversation with you. Really insightful.
Thank you.